Friday afternoon. Thanks for joining us on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Chris Harapsky. Let's get right to your headlines. New this afternoon, accused murderer Luigi Mangione pleaded not guilty to federal charges against him for the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. One of the counts in the indictment making the 26-year-old eligible for the death penalty. Mangione facing 4 counts, including murder with a firearm and stalking. The prosecution in this case says they'll seek the death penalty for Mangione. That does add another level of difficulty for the prosecution, however, as they will need to get a unanimous guilty verdict and a unanimous recommendation that he be put to death. Breaking today, the federal government is reinstating student visa registrations for hundreds of international students enrolled in universities across the U.S. Some of those visas were taken for minor infractions, according to Politico. Those mass terminations were met with lawsuits filed by students, several of those right here in Minnesota. Several federal judges also stepping in, ordering the Trump administration to restore those visas. According to lawyers for the Trump administration, ICE is developing a policy for international students studying in the U.S. on student visas.
Judge be released, no justice, no peace. Let the judge be released, no justice, no peace. Let the judge be released.
New video into the newsroom today of protests in Milwaukee after a county judge there was arrested by the FBI this morning for allegedly interfering with the arrest of an undocumented immigrant who was wanted by federal authorities. According to a law enforcement official, Judge Hannah Dugan was arrested in the parking lot of the Milwaukee County Courthouse. In a since-deleted tweet, FBI Director Kash Patel said Dugan intentionally misdirected federal agents when the person that they were trying to arrest appeared in her court for a separate case. Patel also said the judge's alleged obstruction, created increased danger to the public as a foot chase ensued. Got a live look from Vatican City today, where thousands are still filing past Pope Francis's coffin, paying their respects on the final day of his public viewing ahead of his funeral tomorrow. Those ceremonies for the Pope will be a reminder of the man himself, simple, understated, focused on the Catholic faith. Jay Gray is at the Vatican right now with a closer look.
Huge crowds continuing to gather in and around St. Peter's Square on the final day that the public can file past the coffin of Pope Francis. As of noon Rome time, more than 150,000 had paid their final respects to the Pope, and that number is going to climb significantly as they move through the evening until it's all closed down. And at that point, there will be a very sacred ceremony, the sealing of the coffin. The cardinals, many of them will be in attendance. It's a time when they go through some of the vestments and some of the traditions of this church, including putting a white silk veil over the Pope's face. He'll be sprinkled with holy water. Inside his coffin, you will find a pouch with coins minted during the time that he served as Pope. He'll also have documents outlining his life and his works. There'll, of course, be a death certificate. He'll be holding a rosary. And the broken fisherman's ring, which is broken at the passing of a Pope, will also be inside that coffin. It will be sealed. And then all that will remain is tomorrow's funeral and his burial at the Basilica of St. Mary Major. That, again, another example of this Pope really stepping away from some of the traditions. He won't be buried in St. Peter's Basilica, but instead at this church that is about 20 to 30 minutes away from the Vatican. It was one of his favorites, if not his very favorite church here in Rome. In fact, every time he traveled overseas, he would leave from the airport straight to St. Mary Major for prayers. He visited, we are told, over 100 times during his 12 years as Pope. He'll return there tomorrow one last time. That's the latest here at the Vatican. I'm Jay Gray, NBC News.
KARE 11 and KARE 11 Plus will have coverage of the Pope's funeral tomorrow. Tune in starting at 2:55 Saturday morning for coverage. New video today of more Russian attacks in Ukraine. The fresh round of attacks come after President Trump vented his frustration over the lack of progress on a peace deal on Thursday, saying he is, quote, not happy. Right now, Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff visits Moscow for further talks with Putin on reaching an agreement. Now, according to a recent interview with Time magazine. The president says he was joking when he promised to end the Russia-Ukraine war. On his way to Italy today for the Pope's funeral, Trump commented on the negotiations to end the war.
We're meeting with Putin right now as we speak, and we have a lot of things going on, and I think in the end we're going to end up with a lot of good deals, including tariff deals and trade deals. We're going to make our country rich, but we're going to try and get out of war so that we can save 5,000 people a week, and that's what my aim is. I want to save 5,000 young men. They happen to be mostly Ukrainian, Russian, 5,000 young Ukrainian and Russian men, and that's a big honor if I can do it. I think we're pretty close.
Meantime, if you shop on Temu or Shein, you're going to be paying more. The Chinese e-commerce sites began making price adjustments today. It's due to President Donald Trump's recent tariffs imposed on goods from China. China is the largest clothing importer to the United States. So these tariffs will most likely raise the cost of most clothing, according to trade policy experts and economists. Developing right now, former Vikings great Adrian Peterson out of the Hennepin County Jail after being booked early this morning for driving while intoxicated. According to court records, Peterson was booked at 5:15 this morning and released just after 7:30. According to the State Patrol, Peterson was pulled over near Richfield for going 83 in a 55 and arrested on suspicion of DWI. Peterson was just at the Vikings draft party last night. We're going to be following this story all day. Stick with KARE 11 News now for the very latest. Developing right now, a Senate Ethics Committee says DFL Senate President Bobby Joe Champion did not violate conflict of interest rules by proposing state funding for a Minneapolis violence prevention group with whom he has personal ties. But that doesn't completely shut the door on the allegations. Earlier this session, Champion proposed $1 million in funding for 21 Days of Peace, that's the name of the group, through a grant to Community Action Partnership of Hennepin County, although that funding didn't make it into a larger spending bill. The group does violence prevention in Champion's North Minneapolis district and is led by Reverend Jerry McAfee. However, Champion didn't tell colleagues at the time that he previously represented McAfee on legal cases as a pro bono attorney. Since he wasn't paid for that work, the subcommittee found that Champion didn't violate Minnesota law. But at the urging of Republican members, the committee agreed to recommend that Champion make better disclosures in the future.
You may not have a financial conflict here, but as the Senate president, don't you have a higher standard of transparency to the public?
When you think in terms of transparency, we always want to be transparent, and all the Senate rules are for all senators. If individuals believe that our conflict of interest provision is not strong enough, then guess what we do? Change it.
The committee decided not to issue a finding today on Champion's proposal in 2023, which actually led to $3 million in funding for 21 Days of Peace because it happened 2 years ago. A separate ethics complaint filed by Republicans will be heard by the committee next month. Heads up, if you're heading out of town this weekend, there's a major road closure you got to know about. Here's a live look at I-35W near 494. It is windy. This is part of a massive closure that starts at 9 o'clock tonight. That closure runs between I-494 in Bloomington and 35W, 35E split in Burnsville, and it lasts until 6 Monday morning. So you're not going to be able to travel that route this weekend. Crews are removing 2 bridges over the interstate. 2 lanes will be open in each direction by Monday's rush hour. Let's talk about history now. For the first time ever, one local author won 3 Minnesota Book Awards in a single year. That author, Kaukalia Yang, also reached every age group in the process, taking home the awards for children's literature, middle grade literature, and for memoir. Kent Erdahl has the story behind those stories.
Pretty special.
There's something universal about a Gold Star sticker.
You know, when I was a kid, before I even learned how to read, I noticed the stickers on the books. And then when I became a writer, I learned how hard it was to earn them.
Kaukalia Yang says before this week, she was lucky enough to earn 4 of these Minnesota Book Award stickers during her 17 years as an author.
They sent me finalist stickers as well, but I'm a little bit superstitious, so I don't put them on. I wait.
All right, and the winner
On Tuesday,
for children's literature is
she didn't have to wait long
The Rock in My Throat by Kaukalia Yang.
to add another
Kaukalia Yang.
and another,
Kalia Yang,
and another.
a story of my mother's life.
Her 3 wins in a single year made history. And if you're wondering how that felt,
Incredibly humbling, a little bit astonishing, but more than both things, I felt like I belonged.
as a Hmong American raised in a refugee camp until the age of 6, these 3 stories all explore the journey to belonging.
This one is about my own journey with speaking, with words.
The Rock in My Throat tells the story behind a silent struggle that defined her early life.
This is 7-year-old Galia, fresh new jeans.
Around this time, she began refusing to speak in public for a heartbreaking reason.
My voice died inside of me when I noticed how other people didn't have the patience to wait when mom and dad were struggling into understanding. I want to say thank you for all of the people who waited all of those years when I could not overcome the weight in my throat.
In The Diamond Explorer, Kalia explores what it means for middle schoolers to find belonging in a scary world.
Of all of the books, if you ask me, which was the real shocker, it was this one, The Diamond Explorer. It is the riskiest of all of my books. I know it.
But she says it wasn't the scariest. That title belongs to Where Rivers Part, a story of my mother's life.
When you take on your mother's voice, it doesn't matter who you are. It's a scary, daunting task.
But it is a task that helped her better understand her own journey.
Even in a dirty place, my mother gave me space and room to feel clean.
And years later, she shines.
But it feels like I'm giving my mom a star. So it's really very, very special.
Very, very, very special.
I hope you brought like a wagon for these things at this point.
I came with many hands. I was there because they lifted me. I've never been confused about that.
Wow, what a story. Kalia says winning these 3 awards in 1 year is also an unlikely gift, considering she wrote them all on different timelines. She says it took 7 years to finish The Diamond Explorer, compared to The Rock in My Throat, the other book, which she says she wrote in less than an hour. Congratulations. Stick with us, more news and weather coming up after the break.